I'll talk a little bit more about maybe my philosophy with ship selection in Romulans. I like picking maybe two big ships for Romulans, whether that's two Deridex and a Valdor, a couple of Riemann warbirds. We haven't even talked about the scimitar.
Whew.
How are we this
Yeah,
far
that's
into the episode and we haven't mentioned the scimitar?
the easiest way to build to win with a Romulan is you just build the scimitar, and that's pretty much it. And
Or
then you can
or
just
like three
win.
Riemann warbirds.
Yeah, it's kind of what makes me. It's kind of the sad part about the Romulan faction is like they've got all these options, but they don't have them fleshed out. So if you want to choose, let's build a big dangerous Romulan ship, you're inevitably pigeonholed into just flying the scimitar. It gets a bit boring. But yeah, back to what you were saying though about you build with you pick two big ones.
Yeah, or maybe three. Depends on your point levels. But you pick a few big ships. You bring a smaller ship for support. Whether that's a D7, that is technically a smaller ship at this point. Whether it's a scout vessel or a science vessel.
What about a
Personally,
Romulan drone ship? Those guys are like dog fighters. And
I do love
their
my
stat
drone
block is
ship.
333.
I really do love the prototype. I what I struggle with, see, I love prototype 01 more than 02. I wish 1 had gotten the discount, and I feel like if they had done it now, they would have given us a card for 1 in with 2 in that card pack, and it would have made me so much happier. But
Well, I mean, you had to get prototype 1. Oh, you mean like a reprint with a better ability?
no, even just the same ability, just reprint the card, the named ship
Well,
card at the lower point cost.
at the lower point cost.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
that's it.
All right, I get
And
it.
then
Because
if
you
you
have
still
to
wanted
have
the
prototype 1 in order to fly prototype 2, because the way the
Yes.
card packs worked.
Yeah.
For
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
Um,
Prototype 1 was 24 points, prototype 2 was 19.
yeah. And that's a big discount, and I love the discount, but really what I end up doing is I'll stick Denatra on my 6-point science vessel, or if I'm feeling like really protecting things, like a Mirok science vessel for 10 points, and leave that
Ooh,
thing cloaked for the whole game and never take a shot, and use Mirok's science vessel as an action to repair a shield or hull on target ships, and Denatra's really playing a support role.
yeah, I love Mirok's Science Vessel. It's one of my favorites. It's one of the like two. Well, prior to recent, yeah, it's one of the two medic ships in the game.
Yeah.
I still can't believe that they didn't give the actual medical freighter a healing ability.
The Pasteur,
Like,
yeah.
my gosh,
that
they need to re-release if they do a
all
if they
good
do
things
a
faction pack.
or even a what was it, lower decks faction pack.
Oh,
They
yeah.
can reuse that model because that was the. I was remembering the name. It's like the Cueto, or it was the ship that Mariner was on before the Cerritos.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a medical ship.
Okay. I mean, hey, anything to get another Pasteur in the game. That would be nice.
Yeah. Or Olympic class.
Yes, Olympic class.
I could tell you a story about why it looks the way it does. Do you know why it looks so different from regular Star Trek ships?
I'm guessing it was maybe a kit bash model and being set up for a different show or movie.
It wasn't made by the people who work at Star Trek. What happened
Okay.
was it was made by a fan
Okay.
of Star Trek who was friends with somebody who worked on the show. And when they needed to make the last episode of The Next Generation, they were like, hey, we need a ship model really quick. Do you want to, like, I don't know, reuse the Excelsior for the 100th time? And one of the guys on set was like, I have a buddy who made a 2-scale model of a star. His reimagining of like the Enterprise in like the original sketches. So it had like the big spherical dome. And they're like, okay, we'll use his model. And they
because it's
I
better
don't know
than
if the part
using
about the Excelsior was true, but so they just used this fan's model for the episode, and that's why it doesn't quite match the normal Star Trek aesthetic.
It
But it was
works
like a
though.
fully rigged, set-ready model. Can you imagine that happening today? Like,
No,
I mean, it kind of did happen with Picard season 2. Didn't they take Star Trek Online models and import it for the opening scene?
maybe, but I think that was
Yeah.
planned.
Yes, but like the idea that it wasn't the models weren't originally designed for the show.
Yes.
Or I guess technically this model was designed for the show. But
Well,
yeah.
with hope. Yeah.
And speaking of models designed for the show, there was an episode of Voyager where they used a Romulan science vessel, painted it orange, and flew it around backwards.
Yeah. I did see that.
And that brings us back to the science vessel. Ha! It was all a planned arc.
There was always a plan.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the science vessels, you get bits and nuggets here. That's just how this all happens. I think the science vessels, right? Your Talvath, your Apnex, these are ships that you gotta maybe experiment with. Like the Talvath has this weird ability, where you're essentially gambling. It's an action. If you are within range 1 to 3 of at least one enemy ship, roll 3 defense dice. For every evade result you roll, you get an evade token. So you might get 1, you might get 2, you might get 3 if you're super lucky, or you might get 0.
Yeah, this is up there with the Doctor and Blood Oath. I love my gambling cards. I every once in a while I create a gambler build, and then I don't actually bother running it because they are, for one, they're very unpopular in, I think, competitive, but they're a joy to play.
Yeah.
Because it's like you never know what's gonna happen.
The nice thing about the Talveth is that it has 3 tech slots. So
yes, there are very few ships that have 3 tech slots. Ironically, I think the Romulan drone ship does, or at least one of them does.
It should.
There's, I think
they both do.
There might be is there a Xindi ship with 3, or is it 2?
I don't recall.
There's an
I know
aquatic ship,
Dauntless
I think,
has
with 2.
4.
Yeah, Dauntless is the king and queen of tech.
Yeah.
Throw on a cargo hold, repurposed cargo hold as your captain because of its named ability, and then you get yourself a 5th tech slot, and then you can just fill it up with the mines we will speak of soon. I assume.
Yeah, actually,
I think we should save the best for last.
I mean, I'm willing to go there right now. How do you build with that? How do you build Romulans? Well, really, now, I think it's cloaked mines because
yes,
as we've been talking about with Romulans, I think in anything you do to compensate for their lower attack dice, you need to build the card that the designer apologized for. So there is a funny story. Well, maybe not funny. There's a story about cloaked mines.
Ooh, hit me with that.
So I got to talk to Andrew Parks. He was the original designer of Attack Wing. He's since departed and moved on to other projects. But he designed the starter set and many of the first waves of expansions. Well, they had the mine token from the starter for antimatter mines. And WizKids came back to him and said, hey, you got this token. We want another use for it. So he built cloaked mines. And he realized what that did.
Fairmounts turned this into a unique card, I believe, right?
Oh yeah.
For a while it was ship unique, and then you guys made it into a unique.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a beautiful card. For those who don't know, essentially it places a turret on the board that automatically fires at any enemy ships that get near it. And it's not a if you overlap it attacks. It's a if you get near it within range 1. And it's so good. And you can deploy as many of them as you want during the planning phase. So you can load the Talvath up with 3 of these, fly it into the middle of the game board if you're flying faster than the enemy, and then just dump all 3 of them out there.
Yeah.
Now, you don't want them to get too close, though, because if their radiuses intersect, then they count as 1 minefield. And so you don't get your double attack. You just get 1. But the point is, though, is if you want to have a use for those science vessels, aside from just support ships, you load them up with mines. Because the one thing better than being able to cloak and attack your enemy is being able to attack your enemy without even using a ship.
Uh-huh. Yeah, while you're in one corner of the map, your mines are attacking them on the other side. And it's not necessarily even that cloaked mines are doing a bunch of damage. It's that the mines are acting as a deterrent for your opponent to even fly near them. Because
you can control the path of battle, which, if the game becomes more about flight, I think we're going to see cloaked mines in the unrestricted metas coming out more, because it punishes flying all over the board.
Well, and look at what's happened with the Maquis getting their extra movement tricks. Now the Romulans have all kinds of extra movement tricks, extra echo tricks.
I'm excited for that.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I love the tricks, but at some point we have to talk about counterplay, and we're going to get there.
Do you think that the Tholians will ever be useful at stopping the additional movement people?
Not as they are.
Did I use Tholians and useful in the same sentence? I'm sorry.
Without using the word not. Honestly, here Tholians need more.
Oh yeah, if WizKids was allowed to release a card pack for the Tholians, I would want them to.
Which, look, if they have a better partnership with Star Trek Online, if the fans of Attack Wing choose to support and embrace what Star Trek Online has, the story that they've gone down in that way, then I think that there is potential for it.
Oh yeah, because there's all sorts of crazy Tholian ships and
exactly, and
Star
I'm
Trek
okay
Online.
with getting crazy ships. I really don't care. I may not love them, but I'll take them.
Bite the bullet and do the X-Wing thing. Go into the books. Actually, yeah, the new Federation pack is all about the books, but like,
yeah.
Oh my gosh, the amount of
ships.
Legends-based ships that were brought into the X-Wing franchise.
Yeah.
To imagine if Star Trek Attack Wing started reaching into the games, and you get your Borg probes. Actually, the Borg probe appeared in Voyager. Yes. I just think of it as a Star Trek Online ship because you see it in Star Trek Online all the time as a low-level enemy.
Well,
but yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, hey, that's a discussion for another day, absolutely. But
I think we're on the subject of building, right?
Building for Romulans.
Yeah.
I mean,
so
we're going to get more into the tech at the end of this, but there's a lot of good tech.
Yeah. So the way I build for Romulan, I typically will pick 1 to Deridex. Because the Deridex are kind of your meat and potatoes of the Romulans. I won't usually pick the Scimitar, because to me it's too easy of a pick. Aww. It's kind of like Picard 9. It's like, well, I mean, of course you'd pick Picard 9. So with the Romulans, I typically will go with a Deridex, and then I might run 2 Deridexes, depending on whether on the point size or whether I'm using the 50-point cap.
Okay.
If I'm playing sort of more competitive, I'm going to be definitely running the Talon. Lars is going to be there somewhere, and I'm probably, again, going to have Mirok flying about, healing people.
Okay.
Or I might never actually use his ability, but it's nice to know it's there.
It is.
I usually would put somewhere on one of my ships, I would throw down the other thing, I'd be using advanced cloaking, the old advanced cloaking. There's also the, I can't ever remember its name because there's so many Disruptor Pulse, Beam, Bombardment, but it's the old Romulan card which lets you attack everyone in your forward firing arc.
Okay, that's one of the Disruptor, yeah.
Yeah, Oh,
I'll get
ships.
there.
It's basically like a torpedo fuselage, but like a diet torpedo fuselage, because it just
Disruptor Pulse.
pulse. Okay.
Pulse.
Because it hits everyone, but it's only a 3 dice attack. But it's
Uh-huh.
a disable to use the weapon,
And not a
and like
discard, yeah.
it's a yeah no it's not a discard. It's just to disable this weapon, and then you attack everyone.
That has its purpose.
It
Absolutely.
came with the Hakona, I think, and
Okay.
it's not even unique. Um,
Hakona
Here we go.
Mata.
It's a 5.3 range 1 to 2. Disable this card to perform this attack. During the declared target step, target every enemy ship that is in your forward firing arc within range and perform a separate attack against each ship of each target against each of the target ships with this attack. It's +5 SP for a non-Romulan ship. I like it. I think there's a new version of it. Yeah, there's a new version now in the Tau Xiao pack, which is pretty much the same, but it's 2 time tokens. And it's 3 points and +3 for a non-Romulan ship.
That seems better.
So this is the card you'd break out if you wanted to fight someone who had a Romulan scout swarm. And although I've heard people say like, oh, this isn't useful for pretty much anything, I'm like, I think it has its place in fighting. Like, if you had loaded up a bunch of ships with these and you shot at a Burrell swarm, you might be able to destroy a couple of them, or at least cut them down to half health by the end of by a round or two.
Yeah, it depends on how good their defensive quality is. Right?
Yeah, that's the
If they're
problem.
running
If they're
naked
cloaked,
dice, then yeah, you can probably get through. So let me ask you this, because I think you played the Deridex more than I do. Do you run additional weapons array on them?
Oops, I accidentally tried to save a document here. Sorry.
That's the one per ship when
I know.
attacking. It rolls one +1 attack die. The Deridex class only.
Yes, I do. I also sometimes will run the Mirror Universe equivalent, which when you put it on a Deridex ship costs the same amount. What was its name? It came with the Tyrek.
Yeah, I'm looking that up.
Easiest way to find it is you go to the Mirror Universe faction only, and then you just
additional
type
phaser array.
DD. Yeah. So with that one, it's 2 SP, but you have to pay a 1 point faction penalty to put on Romulan. But it does the same thing as additional weapons array. And when you put it on a Romulan ship, it just becomes the same price. So you get essentially for, I think, 6 points, a +2 to your primary weapon.
Mm-hmm. And then you throw Sakona on there, and really it's only 2 points plus Sakona's cost for.
I forget about Sakona.
I mean, granted, that's independent, and now we're really faction mixing, and yeah, I mean, it's how crazy do you want to get?
Here we go, additional phaser away. Yeah, it's a pretty useless weapon for the Mirror Universe faction because there's only 1 to Deridex, 2 if you count the generic. Yeah. But I love it for Romulans. To me, it was more of a Romulan card than it will ever be a Mirror Universe card.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if you throw that on your Avatar of Tomed or a generic Borg one, you're now rolling 7 attack dice.
Uh-huh. And if you bring in forward Disruptor banks, if you do a 2 or 3 bank, you get an extra attack die. You've capped out on rule of 3, but you've added 3 dice to a Romulan ship.
Yeah, and there's 3 weapon slots on the Avatar of Tomed, so it'll work. Even I don't know if there is on the generic though.
And here's what's cool: the additional weapons array and the forward Disruptor banks, they simply say, okay, +1 attack die this game round on the forward Disruptor banks. But additional weapons array, when attacking, roll +1 attack die. That plus your Disruptor Pulse, now you're at 4 dice. Because additional weapons array doesn't say primary weapon.
See, that's something I've been confused about is whether a card lets you do it for 1 round, like 1 attack for the round, or all attacks.
Yeah, so
Because it's
this
a
game
bit
round, that's your phrase. Game round is one time. The when attacking in bold, that's every time.
Oh, okay. So round is once, and when attacking bold is every time.
Yep.
Cool.
So
All right,
additional
I'll keep
weapons
that in
array is
mind.
definitely worth the price of admission, especially if you're going to roll something like Disruptor Pulse that lets you fire over and over and over again.
Hmm.
Granted, it's 8 points, but then you're rolling 4 dice against everything.
Yep. The other thing I'll do is I'll usually try to carry one cloak mine. Not typically two, because I don't want to make the opposing player never want to play with me again.
Yeah,
And that's how I typically build Romulan.
I get it. A solid way to do it.
Yeah, and when I play them, I typically will rely on the advanced cloaking. So I'll be taking a lot of green moves, but I'll get to stay cloaked.
Yeah.
Unless I fire off that fancy pulse weapon, because I wouldn't be able to recloak every time I launched an attack. Funnily enough, I have a hard time lining up that weapon to be useful. I probably should work on my flying a bit.
It never hurts.
I rely too much on cards, which give me additional moves that when I set down to one move, I don't know what to do. All right, so that's how we build for them. Now the question of how do we beat them?
So here's my number one way to beat Romulans if I know I'm going to play against them. I use their own crew against them. Nanclus. Action, discard this card, target an opposing ship at range 1 to 3. This game around, the target ship rolls +1 attack die this round, but cannot roll defense dice.
Oh yes, I love Nancullis. I think I was one of the people who sort of started telling people to bring them back into the meta, because I
So,
was like, wait a minute, why is no one flying Nancullis? You can just cut through all the defense dice.
so those 6 defense dice that Romulans are running, no, they get nothing. They're cloaked. They might still survive the shot the first time. But
I mean, you'll have to
they're
get
be out.
Nancullis back, but there are ways to do that.
Also, if you have low captain skill, you can run projected stasis field and disable the Romulan ship, the shields of the Romulan ship before they can cloak. So now you're preventing them from cloaking because they don't have any active shields. So that Klingon card, projected stasis field, is going to knock out their ability to cloak, which typically will prevent a lot of their combos and limit their potential of defensive abilities and offensive abilities. Just ideas. The other thing,
Yeah, don't let them cloak.
yeah, basically,
Ram them if you have to make it so they don't get their action. Like park yourself in front of a. If you park yourself in front of a tricked out Deridex, sure you're gonna get blasted by that Deridex, but they'll bump into you and then they'll lose their action and then they'll just be a sit and duck for your other ships. I think I've used that strategy on someone before. The old blocker strategy was really popular in the X-Wing game. Not so much here.
no, because less ships, typically.
Also, less large-based ships in Sta.
That
X-Wing's
too.
filled with them, and they always are tanky, so you just park them in the middle. They often have a stationary move, too, so you can just park them there and let people smash into them. If you try that in Sta, you'll just get blown up, which is why you use a scout ship or a science vessel in order to ram, or something real big like a tactical cube.
I wish we
Yeah,
had
let 'em
more
bump
large
into you.
base ships. I think that things like the scimitar should be on a large base. But
Actually, if you look by scale, the Deridex class itself should be a large base ship. It's so huge, even compared to, I think, a Galaxy class.
yeah,
Isn't it supposed to be like 3 times the size?
Yeah.
But this Sta a long time ago said we're not going to worry about scale.
Well,
Because if they did, then compared to the shuttlecraft, the board cube would be a garden shed if you wanted the game to be to scale.
yeah, Or the shuttlecraft needs to be the size of a pinhead.
Another way I would say to fight Romulans is Romulans struggle so much to get a high number of defense dice. Just fly ships that natively have high attack dice. Sorry, I meant to say attack dice. Because then you're saving points that the Romulans are already spending just to boost their attack up. Like, we want to boost our ship's attack dice by 2. We got to fork out 6 points to get, your additional weapons and your additional phaser array. And you, meanwhile, can run a ship that just rolls 5 dice, and has its own abilities and cool stuff, and lots of shields if you're playing Feds or something. And you'll have an advantage over the Romulans in that regard. It's just like they're struggling to even roll anywhere near the amount of dice as you are.
Yeah. One of the other things, high captain skill gives Romulans fits because they're going to do all of their sensor echo shenanigans, and then you get to come in and react to all of that after they've moved.
My personal play style is actually typically to use low captain skill, so that's kind of a for me.
Sure.
But that's because I played against a lot of people who had high captain skill. The other thing is Romulans, for their best strategies to work, if you see, the tabletop meta is so different from the actual the virtual tabletop meta is so different from the actual tabletop meta. Because in order for the Romulans to use their best strategies, it requires the player to buy so many copies of the same ships. Yes. Like, you want cloaked mines? Have fun buying 12 copies of the Praetus. You want a Romulan science vessel swarm? You're going to be forking out a bunch of money for that. Unless you're running like a single souped up scimitar, which is a fair build, you're going to have to buy all these various different, like Nancullis. That requires buying a prize ship to get him. All these things. It's like to boost up a Romulan fleet with these cards we suggested, like additional phaser array, additional weapons array. Well, one is from a faction pack you can't find, and the other is a Mirror Universe prize ship. So the Romulans
booster,
will be... booster. They will be forking out all this money just to make their ships better, whereas you can just grab a bunch of Vorchas or, throw on some Nebula-class ships, and you'll be outgunning them, and these are ships that you just already had in your collection. So it's like it's an efficiency both in real-world money and in-game point values. You got to outbuild them with efficiency. Run those cheap cards, because if you find a cheap way of doing anything, you've already got a leg up over the Romulans. At least pre-Tal Shiar pack. For the most part, it still applies. The Tal Shiar pack is trying to fix that a bit, but at the same time, it's not like you buy one copy of the Tal Shiar pack and it fixes your entire Romulan fleet.
No, but it's getting close.
It's getting close.
I will say that pack has done more to help the Romulan pack than I think any pack did to help its faction, short of the Ferengi pack.